The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GrokTALK.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter.
GrokTALK.
Oh, feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Now a moment of triumph approaches. It's
GrokTALK.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Good morning and welcome to GrokTALK's Is That Really News newsread. We start with Veto Override Day, which needs a new name. After batting around a few suggestions we've come up with, great PR for Governor Hassan Day, as not one of her vetoes was overridden. We also saw the legislature ignore process and approve a budget deal that gives Democrats nearly everything they wanted, plus a built-in kill switch on the business tax cuts the Republicans wanted. Derek DeFresney from Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire remarked of the deal, while the budget compromise was far from perfect, Governor Hassan was unable to force through harmful policies such as mandatory reauthorization of Obamacare's Medicaid expansion, a hike in the state's vehicle registration fee, or an increase in the cigarette tax. She also had to concede and support much-needed business tax cuts that Republicans have been fighting for. Well, there is that, I suppose. My response was a little bit less approving. So Hassan gets 97% of what she wants, and Democrats and Hassan can run on a business tax cut that will take longer to take root and boost revenue than the time allotted before repeal, for which Republicans will then be blamed. Does that sound about right? Parental rights with regard to advance notice of sexually explicit material in a classroom and a provision to secure the right to opt kids out of statewide assessments failed to get the votes needed for repeal. Constitutional carry also failed to achieve an override veto. Local events. The annual celebration of Scottish music, athletics, dance, food, and drink has returned to the White Mountains in New Hampshire. The 40th New Hampshire Highland Games and Festival underway from September 18th through the 20th at Loon Mountain Resort. The event, sponsored by the New Hampshire Gathering of the Scottish Clans, includes piping and drumming, Highland dancing, fiddle, harp, sheepdogs, and heavy Scottish athletic competitions. You don't have to be a heavy Scot to participate. More than 60 clans will be wearing their tartans and bringing their heritage to Clan Village. Children 14 and under with an accompanying adult get in free. Single-day tickets are available online at nhscot.org or at the gate. Tomorrow, September 20th, is the New Hampshire Center for Constitutional Studies Constitution Day Forum at the Sheraton Harborside Hotel and Conference Center, 250 Market Street, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Granite Grok is expected to be there. Guest speakers include Dr. Alan Keyes and Dr. Edwin Vieira. The event runs from 1 to 8 p.m. and dinner is included in the cost of your admission. Visit nhccs.org for more details. Groktober is right around the corner. GrokTALK will be broadcasting live from the Practical Federalism Forum at Southern New Hampshire University in Manchester on October 3rd. Steve Lonigan, our next guest, is associated with that group. The Republican Liberty Caucus Convention is at the Crowne Plaza in Nashville on October 10th, and we hope to be broadcasting from there as well. And the 603 Alliance GPS Caucus will be held at the Hopkinton Fairgrounds in Hopkinton, New Hampshire on October 17th. Pre-sign-up is available online at 603alliance.org. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, your Is That Really News newsread for September 19th, 2015. We'll be right back in a few minutes with Steve Lonigan to talk about the Fed and economics. Please stay tuned.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Why are you going to want to listen to GrokTALK? Because when it comes to politics, news, and the culture, we are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio, microphone stomping, conservative bloggers and activists. GrokTALK comes to you live Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you missed us on Saturday, catch us on Monday from 1 to 3 p.m. right here on The Rock, nhcr.com.
GrokTALK.
from the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Rock Talk.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GrokTALK.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GrokTALK.com.
Rock Talk.
All right, we are GrokTALK. Welcome to the program. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy and Mike Rogers. Thanks again to Susan Olson for spending a half hour with us to talk about gun rights and constitutional carry and all that fun stuff. Thanks again to Radical Moderate gave us a call. And, in the opening segment, you folks are welcome to call us, 603-715-9689. That's 603-715-9689. Please check out Granite Grok on Facebook and Twitter. And, of course, you can listen to this and past programs on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Ustream, and always at GraniteGrok.com. Our next guest is Steve Lonigan. He's the head of Fix a Dollar Project. You can check them out at fixthedollar.com. He's the director of monetary policy for the American Principles in Action, former state director for Americans for Prosperity in New Jersey, and he was also the mayor of Bogota, New Jersey. Please welcome to the program, Steve Lonigan. Good morning. Did we lose him?
I guess we lost him.
Oh, we lost him. Oh, no. All right, well, welcome to the program, Steve Lonigan. Oh, there he is. Maybe he's calling us. He got the number. Okay, it's just pick it up. No, just hit play. Hello.
I got cut off.
Oh, you did? So our system hung up on you. Good morning.
No problem. I'm just sitting here. Sorry.
That's okay.
I don't know
Great.
what happened.
Great to have you there. Let me turn that down so you can put that back on. Okay, great. All right, well, I gave you a great introduction.
Sorry about that.
That you missed because you got hung up.
Everything I don't know about myself.
Everything you don't know, right? Yes.
Weren't you one of the guys that ran for governor as well a couple of cycles
I
ago?
ran in a special election against Cory Booker when Frank Lautenberg died in New Jersey in 2013 in what was a very high-profile race. I had the honor of having Mark Levin and Sarah Palin come in for me together for the first time ever. Those two had actually never been together before, and we had probably the largest political event New Jersey's seen in 40 years.
Fabulous.
But that election day was October 16, 2013, and it was at the end of the 16-day shutdown of the U.S. government. And that really, it killed us in the home stretch. It was very unfortunate timing. But it was a great race.
Well, it's all about having fun, right?
Yeah. Well, it's all about winning and preserving our liberty, ultimately, at the end of the day. I mean, and having fun while doing it.
True.
But, in New Jersey, which is really a very blue state, it can get kind of brutal.
Oh, I can imagine. Anytime a Republican gets elected in New Jersey, we wonder what kind of Republican they are, or if they're fiscally conscious.
As you've learned with my friend Chris Christie, which is another topic that you may want to discuss. But I want to thank you guys for allowing me to be with you, because I'll be spending quite a bit of time in New Hampshire the next several months. As you know, I don't know if you know this, but New Hampshire's a critical early primary state.
Just a bit. We've heard that, yeah. Well, we should have you in the studio if you're going to be up here. We'll have to get together and have you come in, and we can...
I will be up there. Guys, my background is I had my own business for 25 years. I was the mayor of a town in New Jersey for 12 years. I was the state director of an organization called Americans for Prosperity here in New Jersey, which I'm sure you're familiar with. My old friend Corey Lewandowski ran the chapter in New Hampshire while I was in New Jersey. I left that project to run in the U.S. Senate race against Cory Booker. So I've been engaged in politics and economic policy issues for 30 years, going back to when I was a Young America for Freedom guy for Ronald Reagan when I was in college. And I have learned over the last decade, working in economic policy issues in New Jersey and nationally, that the biggest issue that I think is that I know threatens the American economy and our own individual prosperity today is the Federal Reserve System. And over the last week, you've seen lots of news stories about how the Federal Reserve held their big meeting on Wednesday, how they've kept interest rates now at zero for near 7 years. And it's just a remarkable situation because this is all about our money.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think that the American people would be totally up in arms. This should be, torch and pitchfork time, because what they're doing to the American dollar is disturbing and very concerning. It's frightening, because what they're doing is they're undermining the value of people's savings, their life's work and their wages. That little piece of paper, the American dollar bill that we so take for granted, is the means by which we measure the value of our savings, our wages, the way we trade with one another, the way two people can do business, face to face or across the country. They don't even have to like each other, and yet rely on this little piece of paper as the way to trade and to store value. The American dream is to work hard and to save and to achieve a better future through your effort. And savings is the deferring of future happiness, today's happiness for future security. So when you make the choice to save, you say, okay, I'm not going to buy that car today that I'd like to buy, or that new couch. Instead, I'm going to put the money away so that 20 years from now I can benefit from that savings. So I can save money to invest in the means of production. Maybe I'm going to own a business or build a house or whatever. Today, that savings is being undermined by the Federal Reserve System. Your money is your property. It is the ultimate measure of private property. And private property is the cornerstone of liberty and economic freedom. Without private property, you really have no ability to grow your assets. And, the Magna Carta was all about private property. The dollar is your ultimate measure of private property. But it's not your property when a bunch of unelected bureaucrats in their ivory towers in Washington, D.C., who are unaccountable to Congress and unaccountable to the American people, can manipulate the value of that money right under our very noses, undermine its value, destroy its ability to preserve your savings, destroy savers. That's not your property any longer. Comrade Lenin, comes right off of the Russian Revolution, is infamous for stating that you can undermine the value of currency and not one man in a million will know it. And he took down the upper classes of Russia by destroying the value of their money by just printing rubles ad nauseum. Now, I'm not taking this discussion to that level. I'm not saying the Fed is like Lenin. But what I am saying is that our money is something that we should never be taking for granted. And the founding fathers of this country understood this extremely well. During the Revolution, back pre-Constitution, the early days of the Revolution, the founders had a disconnect from the British pound sterling, which was the world's most stable currency. It was based on gold. Even though it's called the pound sterling, it was based on gold. And they began printing paper money called continentals. And this printed paper money became the currency of the new government of the United States. George Washington was famous for saying, I needed a carload of continentals for a carload of supplies. The founding fathers who converted their British pound sterling, many of them, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, virtually every one of them, lost fortunes because their continental paper money, which was once British pound sterling, it just destroyed in value. It disintegrated in value. And the old statement, it's not worth a continental, is something was used up to pretty recently in American jargon. It meant it was a meaningless piece of paper. So the founders understood the dangers of printed paper money. And the Constitutional Convention, they established Article 1, Section 8, which clearly states that only Congress has the right to coin our money and determine its value. Congress must have the sole authority in preserving the value of the American dollar. This was something extremely critical to everybody from Washington to Jefferson and everyone in between. They didn't want government bureaucrats to have the ability to print paper money and destroy its value. They knew what it would do to the country. Charles Cokesworth, who was one of the delegates from South Carolina, it was interesting. The South Carolina delegation led the battle to preserve, sound gold-based money for the United States. Is noted for stating, if you turn over the ability to create money to bankers, you give control of your money to speculators and schemers. So they didn't have a good view of big banks back then. And in 1792, in the wake of the passage of the Constitutional and Article 1, Section 8, establishing that only Congress has the right to coin money to determine its value, Alexander Hamilton wrote the Coinage Act. And the Coinage Act was signed into law by George Washington after being passed overwhelmingly in Congress. So we got some pretty good people behind this concept, right? If you think George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, and the people who were in Congress at the time would have been James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, Monroe. And that established, the gold dollar, the $20 gold piece is the sort of preeminent coin, and the $1 silver dollar coin as the most popularly used currency. That would be on money for almost the next 200 years. Gold-backed money, American money backed by real value, backed by gold.
Okay, got a couple of quick points there on this. One of them is Hamilton, who was also in favor of a central bank, so he got kind of split personality on this stuff. But the other is, could you in fact say that the Federal Reserve Act and the other things that happened in that period were the beginning of the end of the authority of Congress? In other words, they rather than making decisions themselves, they elected to pass their power to unelected bureaucrats.
Well, that was exactly my next phase. After establishing American money backed by Congress in 1913, Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act, which was the beginning of abdicating their power to this unelected bunch of bureaucrats. Now, the idea behind the Federal Reserve originally was a good one. It was a backstop for the banks. J.P. Morgan had basically bailed out Wall Street a couple of times in the earlier part of that century, and he said, "Look, I can't keep doing this. We have to have a better system." The original Federal Reserve System, as set up in 1913, actually was running the gold standard and using gold-backed currency up until, phases. First Franklin Roosevelt and then Richard Nixon in 1971, who officially killed the gold standard. So the Federal Reserve System is remarkable. Charles Hamlin, who was the first Federal Reserve Chairman, when it was first established, had an event in which he said, with the establishment of the Federal Reserve, there will be no more financial panics. Of course, that would be followed by the Depression and everything else.
But there was no panic. No panic.
The effort that I'm involved in, because there's so many aspects to monetary policy and the effect on our country we can talk about. What I am engaged in New Hampshire in the next 6 months, and have been in Iowa and other states, is to drive this monetary policy issue, what used to be called the currency debate, into the presidential primary and the presidential campaign. We believe it's essential. Many Americans are waking up to this fact that we believe that it's essential that Congress take back its authority over the Federal Reserve System, and that we have a president who understands the importance of the Federal Reserve System and makes it an issue in the upcoming campaign. I was very disappointed that CNN did not have a single question, any really good sound economic policy questions, but particularly on the Federal Reserve System in the debate last Wednesday night.
Steve, we're going to take a really short break. When we come back, we can maybe come up with a list of questions you would have asked. Stay tuned. Hang on. We'll be right back. I'm Steve McDonald, Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers. We're talking to Steve Lonigan. This is GrokTALK.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, The Rock, NHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime, on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK.
Welcome back to GrokTALK. Steve McDonald, Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers talking to Steve Lonigan about money, fiat currency, gold standards, the Fed, amongst other things. I had a quick question for you, Steve. I'm not an economist. I don't play one on the blog, and I'm certainly not one in general, but I try to look at some of this stuff. Mike's our monetary guy, really. But I was poking around this morning, and I came across an article in the Fiscal Times written by Sam Fleming, and it's called "Yellen Gives Investors a World of Worry." And the second paragraph, it says Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen has built the case for higher interest rates this year on the foundation of rapid hiring by corporate America, driving the U.S. to full employment. Now, I pay attention to politics. I live in a different America from this woman.
Yeah, listen, I got to tell you, this is the ultimate example of what Hayek called the fatal conceit, thinking that these central planners can plan the economy, can plan economic growth. The economic growth comes from the free enterprise and the private sector, not from these central planners. And the ultimate thing they can give free enterprise and the private sector is a sound dollar that they can rely on. And that's ultimately what our whole issue is about. You know, every year, this is really interesting. Every year the Federal Reserve holds their annual Jackson Hole Symposium. It's their big flagship event, and that's where these central bankers from all over the world come out to Jackson Hole and pat each other on the back and talk about what a great job they're doing central planning our economy and our life. So this year, for the first time in the 101-year history of the Fed, we staged a counter-conference to the Jackson Hole Symposium, and we brought some of the best and brightest minds in the country and in the world to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. 2 weeks ago, Kim Moran, one of your great bloggers and writers, was with us at this event. We had people from around the world, Australia, New Zealand, a couple of members of the British Parliament, a couple of great, just re-elected conservative members of the House of Commons. And it was quite dynamic because no one has ever challenged the Fed toe-to-toe before. And if you look at who we had at this event, we had the Heritage Foundation, the Atlas Network, we had the Cato Institute, we had the Manhattan Institute, the Young Americans Foundation. This was the first time ever that all these conservative and libertarian groups came together to challenge the Federal Reserve System. So that tells you that there's a movement starting here, guys, and that's what's important. America is waking up to this. But what was really remarkable is as we had our counter-conference, there was a third conference, and it was a far left-wing group, as far as it can get. They call themselves Fed Up, in conjunction with Black Lives Matter. And they had their conference. And they had their conference in the very same building as the Federal Reserve System. Why that's important is because I was told when we tried to book our event that the Federal Reserve System took the entire building, and for security purposes, no one else was allowed to be in the building with them. Well, guess what? Suddenly, this left-wing group, backed by the Center for Budget Policy and Perspective and Black Lives Matter, lands with a room right inside their event. So, I mean, you got to wonder what that's about. Now, what are they advocating for? They want the Federal Reserve System to keep interest rates at zero, to make low-interest money credit available to poor people so they can buy houses and get loans they can't afford. Now, I think we tried that once before, didn't we? And it failed miserably.
I was about to say the same thing. Where have we heard this before, along with three little letters called CRA, Community...
Exactly.
Reinvestment Act.
They're all sitting around the bar, the guys from Fed Up, Black Lives Matter, and the Federal Reserve saying, hey, we got an idea. We'll make really low interest rates, home mortgages available to poor people. They'll buy houses they can't afford. Guys, you tried that once and almost destroyed the entire economy of the country and the world.
And they're currently doing it with cars. Skip, sorry.
Exactly. You're getting people, you're right, Skip, you're getting people to buy cars they can't afford for 7 years, as much as 7-year car loans. By the time people are into their 5th or 6th year of paying their car loan, the car's not worth what they own on the loan. This is an absolute disaster. It demonstrates that the Fed is very political. Very political. First of all, I've asked for an investigation by Congress. How did this left-wing group manage to get into the building with the Fed people where they said you couldn't get... I mean, wait. If I'm not mistaken, the people at Black Lives Matter were marching down the street something about, killing cops and whatever. I mean, and they're in the state. That's not a security risk.
Yeah, really. Well, here's another thing that I look at, because rightfully you keep saying, the central planners think they know everything, and I'm glad that you brought F.A. Hayek into the conversation, because I look at these Black Swan events and go, okay, what is going to happen? And I think we're seeing, as we mentioned earlier in the show, we are certainly seeing a huge flock of black swans hitting Western Europe right now. So
Yeah.
what do you think that's going to do to all this careful planning? Because I'm looking at up to 35 million people strolling into Western Europe. What is this going to do to the economies of certainly the Eastern European countries that can't afford this? But when they finally all get to Germany and France and the rest, if they are allowed to, because all of a sudden this idealism about brotherhood and everything else is going by the wayside.
Yeah, well, until the first bombings. Look, this is not a good thing. We know it's going to be very tumultuous, and ultimately I think you're going to see a return of European currency. I think this will help lead further towards the end of the euro. That's a complex discussion, but if you go back to just this whole Federal Reserve issue and what I talked about earlier, the vision of the founding fathers, understanding very simply that they needed your money to be out of the reach of bureaucrats and elected and unelected officials. Nobody should be able, once you earn your dollar, it should be your dollar for the rest of it, as long as you have it in your possession. And then you go further, fast forward to like the teachings of Hayek and von Mises about central planning. They both really correlate with one another. Even though the founders never read Hayek, we know that, right, or von Mises, they still understood the importance of individual liberty and owning your money. We've moved so far away from this concept that it's a threat to every single one of us. I mean, today, if you're a saver, if you're an American, if you've worked all your life, and you're hitting 65 years old and you've achieved that goal of saving $1 million. Now, $1 million isn't what it used to be, but a lot of people don't have $1 million. It's still a lot of money. I mean, $1 million should be enough to say, hey, I'm there, I'm a millionaire. And you take your $1 million savings, and you've done it through hard work and thrift and frugality, not because you suddenly became, a basketball star or a rock star, or won the lottery. You did it over time. And you walk in and say, Mr. Banker, I've arrived, I've saved $1 million. They're going to pay you, if you're lucky, 1% interest on your money. That's not enough to pay your rent. That's not enough to pay for food for the year. That's a disgrace. The Federal Reserve, in this arbitrary decision to keep interest rates low, to keep the people that the fed-up left-wing group happy so they can give out low-interest loans to people who shouldn't get them, are destroying savers. They've made a mockery of thrift. They've turned frugality into some sort of eccentricity. Why bother saving? And what this is, gentlemen, is the most clever, diabolical way of redistributing wealth possible. People look at tax policy as a way of redistributing wealth. We know that. Progressive taxation is wealth redistribution. But monetary policy is the most devious means of wealth redistribution there is in the economic system. Because if you take a saver and you drive their interest rates into the ground so that they're losing the value of their savings, then you say, okay, now we're going to lend this money to poor people who can't afford it. You're redistributing wealth. That's ultimately what you're doing. And the other part of it is that because the Fed simply prints money out of nowhere, and then they stop for the moment, but they'll start those machines up again. Trust me, I believe quantitative easing will be back. When they can print money out of nowhere, when you walk into that bank with your savings, the bank is like, what do we need you for? We can just print money.
Steve, we're just about out of time. How do people reach you?
Well, I'll be in New Hampshire a lot. The week after next, I have 5 or 6 meetings. I'm speaking at the Republican Liberty Caucus. I'm doing a panel discussion. I have a number of events across New Hampshire. I want to do as many as possible. We need to get people out into bars, restaurants, pubs, VFWs, radio shows, waking up to this issue before it's too late. Go to my website at fixthedollar.com. We're doing events, and we're booking more events across all of New Hampshire. I think New Hampshire can be critical in this issue, driving this into the presidential debate, and ask those presidential candidates that are coming into your towns, whether it's Manchester or Nassau or whatever, what about our money, guys? What are you going to do about our money?
All right,
Huge
Steve.
question for America.
We got to go. Thanks so much for taking some time to talk to us. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we'll see you. All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Grok TV.